Thanks for pressing play on another Dolphins podcast. It is Super Bowl week, and Josh has been under the weather. We're hoping he feels better going into next week, but I have Kat joining me today. We're recording just days before the Chiefs play the Eagles in Super Bowl 59. Today, we're going to discuss some Senior Bowl takeaways, the future of Terron Armstead. But first, Kat, you married into a Chiefs family. I was talking to an Eagles fan today at work. What is it like? As Dolphin fans, we don't know. What is it like to be in a household preparing for the Super Bowl?
Well, it is Super Bowl time, so what that means is if you're a Dolphins fan, it's NFL draft time. And for my wife and her side of the family, who are all Chiefs fans, it's just, again, sunshine and rainbows at all times. So, yeah, that's where we are now. But, hey, I look forward to these upcoming months here, you know, really the whole process, February, March, and April, of getting ready for the draft.
These months between starting at, say, Super Bowl week, even Senior Bowl, all the way to the draft, it is a lot of talk. We're hunting through a forest, and we're going to try to chop out a lot of the nonsense. But Kat, just to get us started here, I don't think Terron Armstead is retiring. Being Super Bowl week, we have a lot of different players going on a lot of different shows, all up and down New Orleans, just kind of expressing how they felt the season went. And Terron Armstead, talking about the Miami Dolphins with Pro Football Talk, he said, I think we need more of an edge talking about the Dolphins, more of an attention to detail and the small things. The word soft makes me cringe. I've never been associated with that word, so it's hard to even talk about. For the direction of the Dolphins, the frustration is we have enough. We feel like we have the talent to go win. So when you don't, it's hard to deal with. Kat, above all else, does it catch you off guard? Is it surprising to see that he's continuing to talk about the Miami Dolphins?
Yeah, and look, I think any team with Terron Armstead is a better team, and I'm willing to pay him what he's scheduled to make. And because I really think that, I mean, look at last year, he played 15 games, so he missed two. You're expecting for him to miss a couple. And when he was on the field, still one of the best left tackles in pro football at one of the most premier positions. So from a leadership perspective, I wish more players looked and behaved like him instead of Tyreek Hill. So I look forward to him coming back for another year, and it also allows Patrick Paul to maybe get some experience at right tackle if he wants to back up Austin Jackson, or maybe even kick him inside to guard, although I don't think that's his best fit as a pro.
I completely agree with you, and I'm 100% on board. Even if Terron Armstead, he enters the year $22 million cap hit, that's the fourth highest on the Miami Dolphins. I think it's well worth it, but what would you think you needed to have seen from Patrick Paul to be okay with letting someone like Armstead go? Obviously, everybody's going to bring up the inconsistencies in terms of just not being on the field. But Kat, he played every snap in Week 18. It wasn't his best game, but when the season was over, he was still out there against the Jets. And if you want to talk about his durability start to end of the season, I mean, Week 16 against San Francisco, 67 snaps, and he didn't allow a sack against that defense. I mean, he was playing well start to end of the year.
Sure. I mean, Patrick Paul is your starting left tackle for the future, and Terron Armstead is your starting left tackle for as long as he wants to play. That's what it comes down to. I mean, and yeah, I thought Patrick Paul had some flaws in his game. I mean, a lot of flaws that we saw when he was at Houston. He's a giant man, and he has giant man problems. He struggles a lot of times with leverage and to get low. But I said at the time he was drafted, I said before he was drafted, that I think people are overthinking this guy. He takes a long damn time to run through or run around. And as a pass protecting left tackle, those are pretty good qualities to have, especially at the end of the second round where he was drafted.
Are you happy with a trio of Armstead, Paul, and Austin Jackson going into next year, considering the injury issues with not only Armstead but also Jackson?
I'd be good with it. I mean, look, it's one of the it would be one of the least concerning positions on the team. Are there injury concerns? Sure, but I'd rather have a talented trio that have injury concerns, and two of them are young, as opposed to some of the other positions that we're seeing on the Dolphins roster.
Armstead said that he'll be talking with the Dolphins front office pretty soon to figure out the direction and the path that we're looking to go, but he added that he feels great $22 million cap hit. The Dolphins would save $15 million if he's a post June 1st cut. Kat, I get the conversation. There were times he came out of games. They were wondering, I think, if his knee was functioning. I think that was what they were really looking for. It had nothing to do with the pain. If it was up to Armstead, is there really any debate to coming back? I mean, why would anyone want to pass up a $22 million contract? We're the fourth highest paid player on a roster. Like, it just kind of, when you start to think about it, it really shouldn't be much of a debate to say that Armstead is probably going to be coming back. And we need to, as we approach this offseason, the people who are already checking off, like, we'll get that $15 million in the middle of the offseason. That's not how this is going to go.
I agree. And to take it a step further, I don't understand why Armstead would be talking in the way that he's talking unless it was to return. Because, I mean, is another team going to trade for him? No. They're not going to take on that salary for a guy that's probably going to play one more year. Is he going to get a pay raise? No. Not with his injury history, so he doesn't have any leverage there. He doesn't have any leverage of whether or not, the head coach and the general manager stay, or if there are going to be any meaningful changes with the team. Mm-hmm. So I think Terron Armstead is socially aware enough to where he would know to keep his mouth shut if he thought there was a strong chance he was going to retire. Maybe he'll change his mind. Maybe something will change, but it sounds like Armstead might be coming back.
Speaking of social awareness, I mean, Armstead's always been such a great PR guy. He had this to say about Tyreek Hill. Tyreek is explosive, man, and that word is in a lot of different areas. But what he is, he's explosive, he's dynamic. And I think Tyreek Cat was on the Kay Adams show today, being Friday. Basically, he gave a big apology. He said Tua's his brother, yada, yada, yada. And all I'm wondering is, what does Tyreek Hill want? Because I think Armstead labeled him perfectly. He's very explosive, and as we're seeing on the field, off the field, in any aspect, when you're talking Tyreek Hill, it's never a little conversation. It's always kind of feels like a dramatic do or die scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I still am of the belief that what he said after the Jets game is exactly what he meant.
Yep.
And, it's... Yeah, I wish somebody on the Dolphins would come out and say, look, nobody listens to what that idiot has to say, so stop taking him so seriously. But, my feelings on the situation have not changed. I feel with where the state of the team is now, there's going to have to be some rebuilding done with the team over the next few years, and I don't think Tyreek Hill is going to be part of that. And from that point, if you're able to trade him and get a mid-round draft pick and get that salary off your books, then go ahead and do it.
I got an email today. It was just a press release. A publicist, Kay Adams show, just kind of talking about the Tyreek Hill interview. And all I thought to myself is, Tyreek Hill cannot say anything in front of a camera to fix his issues. And that's what he's going to continue to do. We've seen videos of him working out at the facility. We've seen him now go on podcasts. We've seen him go on Fortnite. The issues that are going on inside that locker room are just that. They're inside the locker room. And it's just kind of going to be a tiring few months, because I think Tyreek's going to continue this, whether to position himself to understand, like, hey, I could be in Miami still, where I know I can have success with Tua when he's out there, or this is a team that's going to try to trade me to whatever team that would, just take the contract. So I just think it's going to be a lot of noise for a couple more months before things really, a plan really starts to come into place, I should say.
It's a laughable situation to be part of when you set a precedent throughout the organization that after you lose, those players can say whatever the heck they want, even though they're the leaders of the team and a big part of the problem. So, again, I don't really listen to a whole lot of what Tyreek Hill has to say. He's always been an idiot. The whole thing with him is the talent has always outweighed him being an idiot. So if he does come back next year, and it's probably better than 50% chance that he is, then let's hope that continues. Let's hope he's not a 900-yard idiot. Let's hope he's a 1,500-yard idiot.
That'd be a wonderful T-shirt. Our 1,500-yard idiot. Hey, just one more final question here to wrap up this conversation. Miami has 4 players entering next year with a cap hit of over $20 million. Tua's sitting at about $40 million. Bradley Chubb, 28. Tyreek, 27. Terron Armstead, 22. And I'll even throw in Jalen Ramsey at $16 million. Those are your top 5 players entering the 2025 season. Dolphins have to cut a lot of salary cap space. They need to make some moves in order to get better. Out of those 5, how many are still on the roster opening day?
I'm going to say 4 now. I'll say Bradley Chubb gets the axe. No, let's say 3. Let's say one of Armstead or Hill are not back. Bradley Chubb gets cut. Tua back and probably restructured to create more money, and Jalen Ramsey back as well.
I like it. The draft is still months away, but Cat, people do say it starts in Mobile, Alabama, the Senior Bowl. We're setting the tone for the NFL draft. And Cat, every year we do this. We do the song and dance of people getting hyped up throughout the draft process, people kind of taking a step back. I remember after the Senior Bowl last year, Jackson Powers Johnson was someone who I had going up my board. My board. I don't have a board. What am I saying? But he's someone I'm really like, all right, I can buy into this. The Dolphins are picking right in the middle of the first round. If we want someone to step in and be a playmaker day one, I think it could be him. And after the Senior Bowl, he started to get kind of some noise as a first round pick. That never happened. He ended up going in the second round of the Raiders. So before we really talk about this year's Senior Bowl, I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on what this week means, how much it can really change someone's draft capital. And Quinyon Mitchell kind of seemed like the ideal pick to really talk about here. I went back and looked at the Draft Network's 5 winners from the Senior Bowl. Obviously, Jackson Powers Johnson, Brendan Rice of UFC was one of them. He went in the 7th round, so obviously he wasn't that big of a winner. Roman Wilson from Michigan, a lot of people had him as a winner, and then Spencer Rattler. But Quinyon Mitchell specifically, how'd you feel Senior Bowl week, and did that really push him into the first round? Did you already have him as a first rounder?
When it comes to the Senior Bowl, I put a lot of stock into the Senior Bowl because you're getting not into the game, not the game itself. It means a little bit, but not too much. But as far as Senior Bowl week, you've got the best of the best going up against each other in one-on-one drills. I think it's one of the coolest parts of the draft process. And the reality, too, is for some guys it matters a lot, and for some guys it doesn't matter at all. I mean, look, Quinyon Mitchell, it mattered a lot. I mean, the whole process did, because he went to Toledo. He went to a very small school, was incredibly productive there. I think he had over 2 years, over 30 pass breakups, something insane. But it's like, okay, he went to Toledo. Now he goes down to the Senior Bowl, and now he's stuck on receivers all week, and he's shutting them down. It's like, okay, he's going up against the best of the best now. Then he goes to the Combine, and he shows up an inch and a half taller than a lot of people thought, 10 pounds heavier than a lot of people thought. He looks unbelievable in drills, and he runs in the 4.3s. Now you're starting to get the whole picture that comes together. For other guys like Roman Wilson, for example, probably doesn't matter as much, because he was more of a kind of what you see is what you get type of player. And those guys throughout the Senior Bowl week, the good news for them is they don't have a lot of they don't have a long way to fall, because you kind of know what you're getting. But they also don't. They also struggle to rise as much as some of the other guys could as well.
I love that take. I looked at Draft Sharks, their risers and fallers last year. Some of their fallers, Michael Penix and Bo Nix. I think it kind of speaks to what you're saying exactly. Like, you've seen these quarterbacks playing for 2-3 years in college. The Senior Bowl, unless they go out and absolutely stun you, you're not going to really be moving them in your draft board whatsoever.
Yeah, and quarterbacks too, and that is interesting that you brought those guys up, because both drafted in the top 12, and both teams very happy with them. It seems like Senior Bowl week, it matters more what happens off the field with the quarterbacks. How are they interacting with teammates? How are they getting along? Their actual play is not impacted as much, because you're not seeing the full range of what they can do, and they're throwing to receivers that they never play with. So you don't have the timing down. So rarely does a quarterback come out of the Senior Bowl. I mean, maybe once every few years, but rarely does a quarterback come out of the Senior Bowl just, holy crap, that really changed my opinion of this guy.
I like that you brought up Quinyon Mitchell, just kind of the insane numbers. Someone who I think kind of follows in that path, and I'll start here, Mike Green. Where do you see him going in the first round? Led the FBS with 17 sacks. Weighed in at 250 pounds, and from what I was reading, was an absolute monster during the practices. It kind of fits that same scenario as somebody who maybe wasn't, playing at noon every Saturday, wasn't always in the spotlight, but he has the numbers, and I think he played pretty well Senior Bowl.
My prediction is when the Dolphins pick at number 13, Mike Green will not be there.
Really?
That's not currently where he's projected to go, but
Wow.
I continue to look at him, and 6'6", 248 pounds, and this guy had I don't care what you think of PFF or what anyone does. This guy had a pass rush win rate of almost 23%, which is nutty. And you can say, okay, he went to Marshall, didn't really play anyone, fine. Watch him against Ohio State, who won the national championship. He played great in that game. He looked every bit the part, and now he goes down to Senior Bowl week here in Mobile, and he goes up against, everyone's seen the video of him against Josh Connerly, poor guy from Oregon, who Connerly, by the way, is supposed to be a first or second round pick. Mm-hmm. Destroys him on that. That is just one rep, but I start to say, if this guy tests out well athletically, and I can almost guarantee you that he does, what does he not have? You know, he looks like a Brian Burns type off the edge, and even though he's small school, you know, hey, you can look back 10 years ago at Khalil Mack, who went in the top 5, who went to the University of Buffalo and is turning in a Hall of Fame career. So he's got the traits. There's no doubt about that. It's a matter of whether or not he can finish the draft process with an exclamation point on this.
All right, so let's say, because I mean, the mock drafts, dude, they're going to change so much in the next couple months. So I really hate to have this conversation. So I've seen him kind of going near the end of the first round. What pick would you have to see him fall to before you're the Dolphins saying, we already used our first round pick, but I got to send my second. I got to make some sort of package to climb back into the first and make sure this guy's on the Dolphins, considering all their other issues.
I mean, it's always a loaded question because with how great of an athlete is, if you start to get to the point where he falls to the end of the first or early second round, like what is this guy missing now? Mm-hmm. What does he not understand? Where's he lacking? Because elite pass rushers, elite pass rush projects like this, not projects, but with this productivity, don't fall that far. So
that's a good point.
I don't think the Dolphins will take him at 13. With how loaded they are at edge, and I don't think they trade back up either. I think another team could, but I don't think it'd be the Dolphins.
We saw a decent amount of players sit out for Senior Bowl week. Some people who said they were going and then decided to step off to the side. I think it was the entire Ohio State offensive, or all players from Ohio State. I don't think they practiced too much. Jack Nelson from Wisconsin, he didn't participate. But Kat, was there anyone you were really hoping to see that you didn't this weekend?
Well, I would say Armand Membo. He was out with, I believe, a stomach illness, and he's my favorite. He's my number one offensive tackle right now.
Oh, really?
Even ahead of Will Campbell, even ahead of Kelvin Banks. Not by much. I tend to like Campbell a little bit less than everybody, and Membo more. And it's not just because I'm a Mizzou fan. I'm actually harder on Mizzou players than the consensus are. But a right tackle who's 6'6", 340 pounds, and you watch him in pass protection, doesn't have the big man problems I described with Patrick Paul. He plays with great leverage and pass protection. And if you're looking to redo the mistake of letting Robert Hunt walk, I think you get Membo in there and might even get a better player than Robert Hunt was. So somebody who I think can be a Pro Bowl guard, but also a great right tackle. And if he fell to 13, which is very possible, I think it comes down to, doesn't matter, get him on the team. He's going to settle into one of the 4 guard or tackle spots, and he's going to play for you for the next 10 years.
I was just about to ask, that's your top of your list right now for Dolphins at 13 right now? Realistically,
he'd be up there for sure. I'd have to, because the way I look at the board right now, your Dolphins pick 13. There are the players who I say right now, as we sit here, are not going to be there. Cam Ward and Shadir Sanders are not going to be there unless they have a huge red flag somewhere, because 6 of the top 9 teams drafting in the draft need a quarterback so badly. I can't see both of them missing that entire run there. And then the other 3 guys I'd have to say are Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, and Tet McMillan from Arizona. Those are the 3. A lot of people could say Mason Graham too, but some of those interior defensive linemen, he'll probably go in the top 12. Every mock draft you see will have him in the top 10 probably, but those interior defensive linemen a lot of the times tend to drop a little bit on draft day. We'll doubt he gets to the Dolphins, but you never know.
What are you thinking about tight end? Let's say the Dolphins do that. They address the offensive line in the first round. I think that's kind of been settled. Cat, Tyler Warren, and Colston Loveland are your 1A, 1B tight ends for this draft. But who do you have number 3? Because I think there's a conversation between, 3-4 different guys here?
Yeah, it's really a deep tight end class. My number 3 is a little bit different, and he wasn't at the Senior Bowl. That's Gunnar Helm from Texas. At 6'5", 250, I think he's in and out of breaks very, very well. And you could say the same for Arroyo, who from Miami, who had a great Senior Bowl week. But one little red flag maybe is that in his first 3 years at Miami, he caught a combined 11 passes. He truly is a one-year guy. So I'm not going to fight anybody who wants to have Arroyo, Gunnar Helm, Terrence Ferguson, Mason Taylor, or one or two other guys on there too. But Gunnar Helm is a guy I think is going to be a really solid second-round pick for somebody.
So I read a couple scouting reports that were talking about Arroyo, and it was great route runner. I'm not saying we should deny that, but is that kind of where you'd pump the brakes a little bit, that maybe, hey, we've only seen it for 1 year and I don't know, need more film on it?
Yeah, and well, it always depends. Is this guy a 1-year wonder, or is he an ascending player? I mean,
yeah.
Keep in mind, Jaden Daniels, rookie of the year, best rookie in a long time. He was a 1-year guy. I mean, the year before that, he went to Arizona State and threw 10 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. I mean, and then he comes to LSU, lights the world on fire, comes to the NFL, lights the world on fire. So that's a question you got to ask yourself. But as far as the tight ends are concerned, to me, you're either taking Tyler Warren at 13 or you're not taking any of this tier 2. Because, look, if you take Elijah Arroyo, are you really going to take a player like that on the same offense as Jonnu Smith? Are you going to run two tight end sets all throughout the game? That could be something a little bit different, but I don't think that would actually happen. So after that, I think you either go Tyler Warren or you end up in the 4th or 5th round taking a player at the tight end spot who could really push Julian Hill off the roster. And a guy like that I love is a guy named Jackson Hawes from Georgia Tech, who was at Senior Bowl week, and a player that is just massive, 6'5", almost 270 pounds. He looks like an iceberg out there, blocks like it, can move like it at times, but I think he's a little bit more nimble than people give him credit for, and certainly brings a lot of power.
Could you see a world though where you get maybe I couldn't say no to adding someone whose first name is Gunnar to your football team, and he's from Texas. Like, God, that's like football 101. But imagine maybe a world without someone like Alec Ingold. Does one of these players maybe fit that role in year 1, where you are trying to learn so many different things? Maybe it's that fullback while you have Jonnu Smith being more the receiver. Is that a possibility? Or do you still think that maybe the talent level and where you're picking, you're just not really getting the best value for what the Dolphins need to do, and that's win this year?
Yeah, I mean, if they were to say, look, we're going to cut Alec Ingold and save, I think, about $3.5 million, you'd save by cutting Ingold, and we're going to change things up, and we're going to run a lot of 2 tight end here, and Tyler Warren's going to be a big part of that, or Colston Loveland's going to be a big part of that, or even say a Gunnar Helm, we fall in love with the guy, we had a first-round grade on him, and he fell to the second round. It would have to be an odd situation like that. But for argument's sake, I don't see the Dolphins, who are not quite in a rebuild stage, I can't see them prioritizing tight end at any point in the draft. And that's why I think we're going to be talking about a 4th or a 5th round guy who's challenging Julian Hill, because you've got your Pro Bowl tight end on the roster.
It's a very good point. That is what team's only Pro Bowler. The Dolphins have a 1st round pick, 2nd, just 1 3rd round pick, and that haunts me. In a draft where you should have had 3 3rd round picks to move around, obviously 1 for Jalen Wright. You have 2 4ths because what was supposed to be a 3rd round pick for Christian Wilkins has dropped down to a 4th, a 5th, and 3 7th rounders. I even hope that we're at a point where you just use the 3 7th rounders to move somewhere else. But Kat, this is a long-winded way of which one of those picks would you finally say, all right, we can't do it anymore. Mason Taylor, you must be a Miami Dolphin.
Mason Taylor is Jason Taylor's son, obviously, and went to the Senior Bowl week, and he's actually for me a frustrating watch because he looks the part and he's a good player, but you're always wondering, like, what's your trump card? What are you best at? You know, he's an okay blocker. He for his size, he doesn't high point the ball extremely well. He's decent at it. He's just like a B or a B plus across the board in terms of his play. Now, I'm also big on bloodlines too, where if your dad's a Hall of Famer and you come in the NFL and you have the physical skills, yeah, I think that could be the extra push you need to become great a lot of the times. But to answer your question, to me, he'd have to fall to day 3 for me to consider the Dolphins looking at him. Because I think that's right about where he should go. Maybe you can make a case for late day 2. I'd be fine with that. But I don't think it'd be to the Dolphins. I think it would be to a team that needs a tight end more.
I'd wonder if this would be like that 2018 draft where the Dolphins drafted Mike Gesicki in the second. I mean, the way that Mason Taylor's traits are kind of lining up, I mean, it kind of, no offense whatsoever, kind of screams Durham Smythe, right? Just somebody who is going to come in and do their job at least early on and see if they can develop it into someone. I want to go back, Kat, to the offensive line. Who's been really starting to stick out to you there? Because I think we've heard Chris Greer say it, that this is going to be like that 2020 draft where the Dolphins, Austin Jackson in the first round, Robert Hunt in the second. I mean, he even noted Solomon Kinley in the 4th round. So we got to find some guys here. We got to find some trades that the Dolphins can really take advantage of.
Yeah, as far as Senior Bowl week was a little disappointing in this regard because, yeah, you had some guys stick out, but the ones you wanted to see take that step up, whether they were lined up for the day at tackle or guard, but project to guard, like Emory Jones from LSU and Wyatt Millum from West Virginia, really didn't stick out. They had somewhere between, I wasn't there, but from the one-on-ones that I saw, from what I've read, really average to below average weeks. And Wyatt Millum, if you want to see the reincarnation of Liam Eichenberg, it's this dude, all right, where he was a very productive college player. Only let up a couple of sacks and an ungodly amount of pass protection reps, but short-armed, 6'6", 315 pounds, and really projects as an okay guard. And I actually I even liked Eichenberg a little bit more as a prospect, even though I didn't like him a lot than I do Wyatt Millum. So Emory Jones is a massive right tackle at 6'5", 350. And it projects by a lot inside the guard too, but very tall, very stiff, and did not have a great week. But a couple of guys that, as this process carries on, to me, the 2 big winners of the interior line were guys that weren't even there. Tyler Booker from Alabama, who I saw someone with a mock draft him going 13th overall to them. That's really rich. But this is a stonewall type of guy. I don't know if is he nimble enough to play in this offense. I don't know because he's pretty heavy-footed, but he's a powerful dude. Donovan Jackson from Ohio State is interesting because this is somebody who came into the season as a projected, 2nd-round pick, and out of necessity, when Josh Simmons, who is from Ohio State, was probably going to be a first-rounder, went down for the year. Donovan Jackson kicked from left guard over to left tackle, and I thought that was going to kill his draft stock. But he played great at left tackle. Now, he probably doesn't project there as well in the pros, somebody who's 6'3.5", but I think he, as a left guard, I think he is a day 1 player. And to me, he's somebody that the Dolphins have missed out on too often over the last 10 years. A guy who, okay, he doesn't have the high ceiling of other offensive linemen, but he's also certainly good enough at everything, and is a guy that's just performed at an unbelievably high level against the best of the best in college football. So as we sit here right now, if you're talking about somebody who's a plug-and-play day 1 starter in the 2nd round, Donovan Jackson from Ohio State would be that guy.
Do you think this is the year, like, are the Dolphins and specifically Chris Greer so desperate that he doesn't take he falls in love with traits like this person, Chop Robinson's speed, like Patrick Paul's height, like he finds those measurables that you can't get anywhere else and he makes sure he gets them. Do you think this is the year you finally say, please take that I don't know if it means you take a guard at 13, and that's something we're going to talk about for months, but just even if it's in the second round, if you got to move up a couple picks in the second round, because I think the Dolphins have been jumped over, I think, recently in those middle rounds. Like, is this the year they're a little more aggressive just to get on base instead of home run or strike out?
That's a good way to put it, yes. And not even desperate for offensive line, which the Dolphins should be, but I would use the word pot committed to the offensive line now, because he has said, Chris Greer was very straightly asked about the problems with the team, and he very, very deliberately said offensive line. And so if you don't have the money to spend on offensive line, so if you don't come out of the draft in the first 2 rounds with at least a guy that you're putting out there week 1, then that's a really, really bad look.
A couple names who kind of stood out, second, third round picks. Kat, you can even just say, do you have no idea what you're talking about here? Anthony Belton, Gray Zabel, either of those guys stick out to you?
Oh, Zabel there were 3 winners of the week for me. 3 winners universally regarded, I'd say. And Gray Zabel was one of them. Jack Besh, the wide receiver from TCU, is another. Darius Alexander, the D tackle from Toledo, is the third guy. If you go to any list, you're going to see those 3 names. But Gray Zabel's a fascinating guy because he played last year at North Dakota State. He started 16 games at left tackle. The year before, started 12 games at right tackle and 3 at left guard. The year before that, started, I believe, 5 games at right guard and was the 6th lineman when he wasn't starting, when he was a sophomore. He's played all over the line. Now, the versatility itself isn't the most important thing, but that's when you go down to Senior Bowl week. As a small school guy out of North Dakota State, this guy was the best offensive lineman there as far as practice for the week. Getting reps at center, getting reps at guard. And I think he's going to end up going in the first 25 picks now.
Really?
Yeah. And
wow.
When you look at everything he was able to do, I mean, and Senior Bowl week historically has mattered for these small school guys. I mean, you remember Quinn Miners a few years ago, where he was a nobody. And then Senior Bowl week, he shows up. He's one of the last people invited, dominates the week. I wanted to take him in the second round. He ends up falling to the end of the third. First team All-Pro this year. Hey, look, I'm wrong on plenty, but I wasn't wrong about that. And Ali Marpet, if you remember him from the Bucks, this is about 10 years ago, but he went to a tiny school called Hobart. Didn't even have a scoreboard there in the stadium.
That's awesome.
It dominated the week, and he becomes a multiple-time Pro Bowler. So those are the players that it matters. I mean, even a couple of years ago, Cody Mauch from the same school. He's a projected mid-rounder. Goes to Senior Bowl week, has a great week at guard and tackle, and becomes a top 50 pick. Goes to the Bucs and is already a top 25 guard. So yeah. Gray Zabel, I think, is somebody who went from a mid-round pick to possibly a first-rounder, the biggest winner of the week.
Damn. I'm kind of starting to get on board. If you could slide back 7-8 spots, pick up someone like that, and you get a third-round pick, second. I don't know what the exact capital, but I mean, that sounds like such an ideal scenario for what the Dolphins need. You can stomach, I think, that guard, that plug-and-play guard, or wherever it may be, that plug-and-play offensive lineman, I think, at 21 compared to 13 just makes a little more sense. 2 other names, Kat, that I read a little bit about, Jalen Rivers and Carson Vincent. Did either of them stick out to you?
Carson Vincent, for the wrong reasons. Got beat several times. Had some good reps, too. And the Miami guard that you mentioned there, Jalen Rivers, I came away much, much more impressed with him than I thought I would. 6'5", 325 pounds, really good size for a guard. I think he really moved from the later rounds up to the mid rounds, somewhere in that early day 3 area, where the Dolphins have 2 fourth-round picks. Maybe you get a big school guy like that, plug him in, and maybe you get lucky with him.
I think that's one of Miami's biggest keys to success. Maybe that's something we'll do. Maybe kind of as we get closer to the draft, 4th-round home runs, the Dolphins can try to hit something like that. But Kat, this has been absolutely awesome. The Super Bowl is just days away, and we can't thank you enough for tuning in to Another Dolphins Podcast. Go have a wonderful weekend. Josh, if you've listened to the show, I hope you feel better. Kat, you got any final words, final thoughts about the Super Bowl?
No, I don't. But just two players that did not do well this week that I just want to throw in there. That I'm glad they didn't do well. Not for them, but not because I'm sick or anything, but for the Dolphins' sake. Landon Jackson from Arkansas, an edge player, 6'7", 280 pounds, and
I saw him,
the defensive tackle from Nebraska, Ty Robinson. Where these are two players that if you can get them in the mid rounds, second round maybe for me wouldn't be too high for either of them. If you came away with them in the second or third round, I think you may have two starters. And so why didn't they do well this week? Very simply, these are big push and shove defensive linemen, and those types of players in one-on-one drills, they don't favor them as much. They favor more of the guys who are out there in space because it's a drill where you're out playing in space. So it's there are two players that I thought if Landon Jackson had a great week, he showed up better athletically, could have been in the first, started getting into the first round conversation, but he was viewed as just a big, strong, lumbering, powerful player. That's fine with me for a team looking for a 3-4 end at 6'7", 280 pounds. So I loved every minute of Landon Jackson not having a great week. So I hope his family's not listening, but he's going to go somewhere and he's going to be a really good player.
I wanted to ask you about that. How early you'd be able to stomach like one of the specialists, like just a run stuffing defensive tackle. No, but I'm glad you brought that up.
No, I think he's more than that too. Where he's somebody that will wear on you all game. You go up against him 50 snaps, yeah, you're gonna go head to head with him for 45 of them. But I think he's a lot more creative and nasty than people give him credit for against the pass. I think he only had 6.5 sacks this year, but that's better than some players in this draft. So I think he can get to the quarterback too, but he'll always be a big, powerful player.
And I think the Dolphins are kind of in a spot too where, you're wondering what Calais Campbell's doing. I think you're going to have a pass rush next year, whether it's Chopley in the way, Jalen Phillips being healthy, maybe Bradley Chubb's in the mix. Who knows? Having that in the inside, or like you said, the 3-4 defensive end would be really beneficial.
You bet. And as far as the Super Bowl, I'm staying with 27-20 Chiefs, and it's the Super Bowl of eating too. So don't forget that, everybody. So make sure you stay fed up and enjoy it all. It's people ask me like, Super Bowl, is this like your favorite day of the year? I'm like, I think other people like the Super Bowl more than I do usually. Okay. It's still a fun day, but
yeah.
Do I like the Super Bowl more or the NFL draft day one? It's not close. It's the NFL draft.
Draft day one or week 1 p.m. opening kickoff.
You could have stopped at draft day one. That's my favorite day of the year.
I love it.
It's not particularly close either.
Kat, you have said it all. Thank you all so much for listening to Another Dolphins podcast. Go have a great weekend, and most importantly, fins up.